So, do we need a guru? Swami Kriyananda has always answered that question by saying, no, you don't. End of conversation? Well, not quite. As we heard in today's reading, hazards can quickly appear in any field of practice when we find that we have overreached our level of capability. Without study, experience, and skill, things can get dicey very quickly. And when we ignore the warning signs that tell us that we have overreached our level of understanding and knowledge, we can find ourselves, of course, in some real trouble. And this applies to the spiritual path as well. The climb to communion with God is not exactly an escalator ride. We have to do the work. And there are places where it gets mighty steep. Without sufficient study and guidance, the unskilled devotee can just as easily fall into darkness as the unskilled mountain climber can fall to his death. Claiming to know more than we do, or believing that we are more capable than we are, is not an uncommon trait. But boy, can it ever backfire. The ego has an infamous reputation for reckless judgment when it comes to being seduced by a strong desire or in defending its own self-image. It seems, too, that people of my gender are especially susceptible to this particular affliction. As you probably know, real men don't ask directions. And what makes that funny, of course, is the volume of empirical data that supports the joke. On the other hand, for men and women alike, I think it's fair to say that this physical plane of existence, this earthly plane, is a pretty unusual place to have landed in the first place. Just consider the setup. We are born into tiny bodies that require care and feeding by other people. And by the time we have grown to where we can exercise a measure of self-control, we have already absorbed a great deal of misinformation, in particular on the subject of what we need to do and have in order to be happy. And that's because, for most of us at least, the people who were and have been our mentors are people who they themselves were mentored by an earlier generation of folks who suffered from the same faulty conditioning. I was in seclusion a few years ago, and it suddenly struck me how humorous and bizarre our situation is. Here we are, divine spirits. We are confined to these rather peculiar low-efficiency vehicles that we've been given to move around in, which very slowly wear out altogether. and which seem to be fueled in part, at least in large part, by impulse and confusion. Does anyone ever see it that way also? Now add to that the dictates of karma and reincarnation. We are born into infancy completely helpless. Any memory of a previous life, that memory bank has been erased, and immediately we are immersed into a system of duality in which we are guaranteed that whatever worldly desire we may pursue is going to effect an equal and opposite effect, counter, of course, to what it is that we intended. You know, we learn to think, and that thinking process can very often get us into trouble. The older we get, we wonder why it is that our lives just simply are often so empty of what it is that we really want. Peace of mind and lasting joy. Then one day we are drawn to a place like Ananda, or we read a book like Autobiography of a Yogi, and we discover that in order to have what we really want, we have to complete a sacred mission. And it is no small task. Essentially, we have to break the spell of our worldly delusions. We have to slay all the dragons that come flying at us, breathing fire, and silence that voice of distraction that chatters in our mind with barely a pause. I want a guru. I need a guru to help me get beyond all of that and complete this mission. Without a master to guide me, I know what my future would be. It would be dragons to the end with no end in sight. Having spent more than 50 years trying to figure all this out on myself, it was thankfully clear to me when I came to Ananda that here was a teaching and a way of life that I could fully trust, because it is based on the actual experience of God-realized avatars. These 5 wonderful fellows behind me, in particular Paramhansa Yogananda, the one whose photo is closest to the altar. Have I always been obedient to Yogananda's counsel? No, I haven't been. Have I always learned from my first mistake not to make it again? No, I haven't done that either. In fact, I have a few mistakes, favorite mistakes, that I still make every now and then just to make sure that they're still really stupid. I believe it was Gary's brother Ananta who once described the spiritual path as about 3 feet long, from the base of the spine to the crown. Those who may not be familiar with the chakras, I won't go into an explanation about that here, but suffice it to say that all of our karma is contained in these chakras, these energy centers that are located along that 3-foot stretch inside of us. And the higher we go up that subtle spine through those chakras, the more refined those chakras become. So the object is to energetically ascend, dissolving all of the karmic baggage that we hold inside there. And when we do that, when we complete the journey, the reward is Satchidananda, eternal bliss. Eternal bliss. By all accounts, it's a pretty nifty summit to attain. Now, most of us can move 3 feet in a single stride. But according to Yogananda, that passage, in a spiritual sense, that rite of passage, that journey, takes about 1 million incarnations. Staggering length of time. Given the sheer tedium of hauling that karmic baggage around over such an inconceivable span of millennia, from the lowest form of consciousness to the highest, a shortcut would certainly be a welcome intervention. And that is precisely what the Guru gives us. It's amazing what we get used to. I don't mean to suggest that life on this earth is just a plague of dragons. It's quite the opposite much of the time. Wonderful moments, loving people, personal victories, all kinds of toys to own and play with. These are possibilities that are available to us every day. But in a sense, that's the problem. It's the problem because every pleasure that we seek has a limited shelf life, an expiration date, and it's usually rather short. Trying to extend any pleasure beyond its period of sensation is a little bit like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree. Now, you may not need a guru to figure that out, but isn't it true that despite the fact that we know that nailing Jell-O to a tree is not going to stay there for more than a minute, that nonetheless we spend a great deal of time, compulsive time, in trying to accomplish just that, nail Jell-O to a tree. Someone new to this path might well ask what it is about these masters that merits our attunement to the guidance they offer. It's as simple as this. They have been where we are now. They have overcome every obstacle that a human being can encounter. And they have returned to show us how to do it. But we have to do the work. And we can. But having the right teachings and the right techniques are not nearly enough to bring us to that Satchidananda, that communion with God. We have to open our hearts to the Guru's loving presence. Open our minds to his divine wisdom and take his hand in surrender to his will. When we do, everything that we really want, that peace of mind, love, and joy, it's part of the bargain. What is amazing to me, and I say this about myself, is that knowing that, still continue to reach for the Jell-O and the nails sometime. Each of us carries a different karmic load. But for all of us, the path is the same. That journey is the same. I find it very helpful to remind myself that never in Yogananda's life as an emissary of God did he ever say, do, or suggest to anyone anything that was not for their greater good, that was not born of divine friendship and support, that was not an expression of God's truth. That's a mighty impressive track record. So the question becomes, what makes greater sense? To take the ego's path, do it my way, or that of the guru? Whether or not you think you need a guru, you do. And if you doubt that, just do the math. Measure, your track record against the record of any of these wonderful souls. The elements that these masters bring to us to study and experience: yoga, meditation, chanting, introspection, selfless service, satsang with other devotees, and the practice of Kriya Yoga. These elements combine to form an equation that is dragon-proof and, best of all, foolproof. All we have to do is accept and follow their guidance with heart, mind, soul, and the will to act. What a gift we have.
I just want to briefly mention an event that we had at the Ananda community. Each year at this time, and if you didn't make it this year, put it on your calendar already for next year, we celebrate Guru Day, which is perfect with our topic today. And if you haven't been to the Ananda community, there's a beautiful central courtyard. It's all beautiful lawn and landscaped, and we have 3 shrines. We have one for Jesus, for Babaji, and for Yogananda. And this year, we had an additional shrine. The Sevaka Trading Group took on the project, and it was not any small project, to build a Lahiri shrine. And it was really grassroots because they had to prepare the ground. They laid the stones to have a solid foundation. They built a gazebo and they painted it. And so it was all ready for Guru Day. And it was really magical to see them all work and serve together in that way. And on the day of Guru, during the day, each shrine is decorated with fabric and candles and lighting and flowers, and they just start to begin to come alive. And they just create these beautiful astral-colored altars for us. And there was also one for Sri Yukteswar, by the way. He's next to be permanent. The evening starts in the early evening, and we begin at the Jesus Shrine, and Asha, she speaks so beautifully about each of the masters at each shrine. And she tells stories about them and the lessons that they bring to us and the blessings that they bring to us and how it touches our lives and completely changes them. And of course, there's music, always there is at Ananda. We chant and we meditate together. Then we could each go up and offer our own silent prayer and a candle at the feet of the masters. And it was just so very magical. And of course, that little candle represented that spark of divine that abides within our hearts. And when so many people come together, friends, devotees, and disciples, to honor the masters and to express our gratitude for their presence in our lives, it just becomes an event where those veils of delusion become much more transparent. We felt the masters, and even children were participating, and you could see it in them as well. And You know, Ananda means joy. And when we do come together as we are today to worship, to study, and to serve together, that inner joy and that inner light expands within us. And do we need a guru? Yes, we do. And equally important, we need to honor and nourish that relationship that we personally have with them. When we invite them into our lives, we feel their presence and their guidance throughout each day. You know, they're always there for us. We just need to call on them. So I invite you to the event for next year. It's a blessing to be there. And again, the lights on the altars, they just began to grow and become brighter and brighter. And I think the Lahiri shrine was actually illuminated from the inside out. It was so very, very beautiful. So many blessings to you, great souls, and thank you for coming.